I'm at the Washington State Bar Association, and thank you for joining us at Legal Empowerment, Realizing the Right to Relief from LFOs. Before our presenters begin, I have a few brief announcements. If you have questions or comments, please raise them in the Q&A box or the group chat, which can both be found at the bottom of your screens. WSBA staff are here to support and assist you in your conference experience. This session is being recorded for later replay. And now I will turn the program over to our panelists.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to start off by having each one of our panelists introduce themselves. If you can please come on screen if you are able. Tina, would you like to start, please?
My name is Tina Woods. I have been working with Living with Conviction for the past year, doing some of the trainings for educating people on how to file the paperwork so that they can get relief from LFOs.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tina. And Jahai, please.
Good afternoon or good morning where you are. My name is Jahai Beal. I'm from Georgetown Law, and I worked on the Justice in Motion web app along with myself, Claire, Sabrina, and Alessandra, who are not here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Dante?
I'm Dante Pollard. I've been a trainer with Living with Convictions since they've been doing the trainings for LFO relief, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Dante. And if Debbie and Anna, if you could come on screen and please introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Bosch, and I'm one of the attorneys that works with our trainers. True to the model, as you'll learn more about, well, both Debbie and I are going to be cameras off for the presentation in the background, and we'll come back on for the Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna.
And good morning. Hi, I'm Deborah Espinosa, and I'm the founder, attorney, and visual storyteller for Living with Conviction. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Karen, if we could go on to the next slide, please. So what is Living with Conviction? And you've heard two of our storytellers, just to begin with that, what their role has been in the legal empowerment process. But I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Carmen Pacheco-Jones. I am the executive director of a nonprofit in Spokane, Washington, the Health and Justice Recovery Alliance. We work with individuals who are at risk of incarceration and recidivism, and certainly those who are coming out of the system. So when we look at Living with Conviction and what they have presented and brought out to the community is they've looked at the value of lived experience, those of us who have experienced incarceration, and they have allowed us to catalyze our stories, to bring our stories forward in a way that creates awareness and educates systems, while also bringing that strategy to our people, those who are going into the system and those who are coming out of the system. So as we work in reforming the legal financial obligation and the burden to pay, we're also spending that time in educating our community and how they can seek relief from that, and really bring themselves out of generational poverty. And one of the things that we certainly want to mention is that because of the disproportionate impact on the Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and communities of color that the criminal legal system has, that we see pockets of poverty And it becomes generational poverty. So it might be that myself, I owed $40,000 in legal financial obligations when I came out of the system. And then perhaps if my children were involved, but we're seeing deep levels of systemic oppression present within our legal system. And so I'm very excited to be a part of Living with Conviction and to bring awareness to this really important issue. We'll go ahead and go on to our next slide, please. And we have a very short video that Debbie, when she comes on and discusses her background, she will speak more about it, but we'd like to go ahead and play that video at this time, please. Karen, can you cue up the video?
I think she mentioned there would be a slight pause.
Okay, well, welcome to the pause. Thank you.
Nobody cares, and I guess maybe nobody should care if people are out screwing up their lives and doing the same things that they've always done and have $20,000 worth of fines. It doesn't affect somebody who doesn't care. It doesn't affect a junkie in a basement shooting up, really. But for somebody like myself, who's doing everything they're supposed to be doing and trying hard and owes more in legal financial obligations than they do in student loans and can't buy a house, can't help send their children to college, can't do more than just get by. That people should care about. I don't have the money and they could arrest me. I live in fear of that. I did the crimes and I did the time and I'm still paying for it 16 years later in every aspect of my life.
I have done prison time for King County, Wenatchee, Snohomish County, and Vancouver, Washington. I have accumulated so many fines. I have like over $50,000 in fines.
So I did my time. When I got out, I got me a little side job. And that's when the first time I tried to lease a car. And I went to the car company and they was like, well, you don't have any child support. You haven't bankruptcy here. But it shows here that, you owe. What is this legal financial LF? What is that? It's pretty hurting you, buddy. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know what that is. It's on your credit report. I didn't get the car.
I was on Section 8 housing and working at the Air Force Base part-time and just kind of living my life in my little apartment with my 2 kiddos. And then apparently I had a warrant out for my arrest for LFOs that I didn't even know I had. They sentenced me to 75 days, and I think with good time I did 58. I lost my children, I lost my Section 8 housing, and went right back into my addiction.
It's not allowing people to live their present without being defined by their past. So I can't be a changed person because I'm poor?
people are afraid because they can't afford it. They want to do the right thing. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to have to, do the things they do in order to survive. But, it's the way people live when you force them to live like that.
Such profound experiences shared by members of our storytelling team. And thank you for allowing us to play that. I wanted to ask the panelists now, Tina, where do you see your story, or what do you think about when you see that video?
It just it reminds me of the situation that I found myself in. I'm formerly incarcerated after I was released the last time and decided that, I needed to grow up and turn my life around. I got into college, and that's when I first found out that I had all of this money owed. And it wasn't just that the money was owed, but it was sent to collections. And so there's 12% interest from the courts. And then once it goes to collections, of course, they add all of their fees and their interest. And, the amounts that started out at probably around $12,000 ended up being closer to $60,000 that I owed. And they were trying to garnish my wages when I was doing a work study position at college. And they couldn't do that because it wasn't income. It was considered part of, school money that they couldn't touch. So at that point, I had set up a payment plan just to, try to start working through it. And when I started attending the Evergreen State College, my academic advisor put me in touch with a student that was doing law school, and I got some paperwork from, I believe it was either Columbia or the Northwest Justice Project on how to ask to have my LFOs removed from collections and brought back to the courthouse, which I did, but not having any legal background at all whatsoever the first time I went to court. And as somebody who's never had a positive experience being in court, it was already hard enough because I sat on those papers for a while before I turned them in. And it was hard enough going in and facing, the judge and the prosecutor and everybody. But I didn't have an RCW number on my papers. And so when I went into court the first time, the judge looked at me and she's like, I don't understand what you're asking me to do here. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you not understand? It's pretty self-explanatory what I wrote on the papers, but because I didn't have a RCW, I couldn't do it that first time. So luckily somebody pulled me aside after and explained to me what the issue was. So I got all of the papers, resubmitted them again, and then was able to have my request, be fulfilled. But, it's really hard for somebody who is trying to turn their life around and they want to do what's right. But we have this mountain of debt that has accumulated, and you just feel like you're never going to get out from underneath that. And so having all of that done was a huge relief. Like when I went into court and they said yes, and I found out like how much of that was going to fall off, I wanted to jump for joy and scream, but I didn't because I was in a courtroom and that wasn't appropriate. But There's a lot of people who are in the same situation that don't know that they can have a lot of that waived and reduced. And I think it's important, to help other people who are in that same situation, to give them hope so that they don't return back to the old lifestyle and behaviors, because that's what we tend to do. So, it's a huge, I got involved with Living with Conviction to kind of guide people, teach them the process. I'm not a lawyer. I can't give them legal advice, but I can kind of show them the process of how they can go about doing that for themselves. But at the same time, I still think that there are a lot of people that don't do it because they don't want to have to go into a courtroom again, or they're just overwhelmed by all of the paperwork and the process and the what ifs. So it would be nice if it was kind of a streamlined thing that all of the courts understood, so that more people could get help.
Yeah, absolutely. Tina, I think about what you said and the term hope, right? When you've been so traumatized by a system, you'll not only bring into the system the trauma that created the behavior that potentially got you into the system, but the criminal legal system in its existence is one of violence and trauma, and coming out with that and having the courage to address the system, to go through a trial and error. You didn't have a streamlined process, right? You just kind of just figured it out on your own. And that's so powerful and so courageous, and now you're able to share what you have learned from your own personal experience, and then what you learned as a trainer with others to help them find hope as well. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Dante, same question, within that video, how do you see your experience reflected in there?
I would like to say my experience from like that video would be from me actually being arrested, for some LFO that I had. And the thing is that I didn't know that I had a warrant out for my arrest because of a review, because I missed payment. It's just that they sent it to the wrong address. And so that's one of the things that I learned while working with Living with Convictions, is that, you got to keep yourself updated in their system, and like everybody said on the video, it's like for life. So it's like basically until it's all paid off. But I owe so much. Like it started off at like 3,000 or 4,000, and right now it's at like 20-something thousand dollars. And because I didn't know that, the interest and all, when you're first caught up in the system, you don't know that it's gonna build up. You don't know that it's gonna increase as you go. They tell you about this stuff while you're, signing these paperwork, while you're trying to get released from jail. They tell you all that stuff, but you don't know what they're talking about. You only hear like, I'm getting out, I'm about to go home, but they give you the stuff and you sign it. That's when they got you and you don't even know it. So like I didn't know, and I ended up going to jail for this, and I spent like maybe I think a week and a half incarcerated. And when I came in front of the judge, they just wanted to know why I didn't pay. And I said I had no idea, like that it's mandatory that I pay this. And then they were like, well, just make sure that you stay caught up, make a payment every month when you can. And that was it. So I spent a week of my life for him to sit there for 2 minutes and, like tell me this is what you got to do. And so ever since then, I've been trying to stay on top of it. But no matter how much I pay, it never really changed. It always kept going up because of the interest is so high. So no matter how much I pay, that is always increasing until they came out with the new law in like 2018. I was working with an organization, and I actually went and testified in front of the Senate and, explained, my hardship, the burden of having to pay these LFOs, and how I went to jail. And it was like the worst time. Like, I mean, I went to jail like just before Christmas. I'm a single dad. I take care of two little girls. My daughter's ages 10 and 12 now. But at the time they were 2 and some odd months, like, they were infants. And so I, when went to jail at Christmas time, and then I got released just before New Year. So it's like I felt like it was like the worst experience ever from something that I had no idea was actually affecting me in the way that it did. So I actually went and told the story, and there was a lot of people there, a lot of people for trying to change this law, and of course it passed that year. But there's no way, once a bill passes, there's no way of actually garnering any type of footwork. There's no way of it getting to the people until I start working with Living with Convictions, and Living with Convictions actually start showing people how to create this, how to get back that part of yourself and change your LFO debt. And so they show you how you can get rid of some of the relief from these LFO debts, and with the changes, it's like it makes it possible to try to get from up under it. So it's like, without it actually, without any type of help, a bill is a bill. And if there's no footwork to do any of the stuff to get to the people, it'll just sit there. So it's like, I feel like Living with Convictions has actually helped streamline that process and show the people how they can, change their lives by getting from up under this LFO debt. It's kind of
absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your experience with your family. As being a single father, and the disruption that happened because of that incarceration. And also the lack of communication that comes across when we are sentenced. Nobody's sitting this down and explaining to us, you are going to have to pay this for the next 20 years or 10 years, and there really is a lack of understanding and this disconnect within a punitive system, right? So thank you, Dante, for sharing that. Let's go ahead and bring up the next slide, please, Karen. And Tina, if you could share some of your expertise here about the legal empowerment process. And we'll go ahead and bring them all up if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you. Tina, you're on mute.
I always forget about that mute button. So when we were doing the trainings on the LFO relief, we were basically, teaching people about their rights because of the new law that had passed, and giving them kind of like helping them to feel empowered to be able to go in to the court and file the motions and ask for, a lot of that debt to be reduced. Okay, so, and then also, we weren't giving them legal advice. We made that very clear at the beginning. We're just giving them some information on how they could go about this process and answering any questions that they had. And then what was really cool was the app that was made out of it, because I still feel that, throughout those trainings, when we're kind of throwing all this information and telling them, if you're in this county, it has to be done this way, but if you're in that county over here, somebody will do it for you. If you're in this county, you have to, send it through the mail this way. And so I think that it was still making people feel very overwhelmed and like that it wasn't something that they could do. And that's why, having just a straight streamlined process with all the courts for everybody would still be something that would be very beneficial so that they wouldn't feel as overwhelmed.
Thank you. And does some of this resonate with your personal experience, even beyond, the back and forth with the courtroom and the lack of awareness of the RCW necessity? Is there some other pieces that come to mind or that you would like to share?
Well, basically, when we gave them the information, it's like, if we were teaching somebody how to play cards like poker, we're not going to take the cards and play it for them, but we're going to tell them like the steps that, like kind of like the strategy of the game, and then letting them go on and do it themselves.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful peer-to-peer model that we often don't see in existence within the justice system or the criminal legal system, right? Those who are impacted, those, I know we often say those of us who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, but by creating very tangible ways in which individuals can address, their legal financial obligations, again, that awareness and that tool to be able to navigate and to ask for relief is so powerful. Anything else you'd like to add there?
No.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that I would probably enter in is just because of systemic racism, systemic bias within our legal system, oftentimes the information does not get to the people who are disproportionately impacted. And while at this moment, I'm talking about our racialized societies, Black and Brown individuals and the outcomes there, but I'm also talking about people who experience poverty and those who experience addiction or mental health issues. So it's pervasive, and it's something that needs to be addressed at a legislative space in which we can find ways in which we discontinue allowing the pervasive impact of legalized debt on communities that truly have no means and ability to pay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So Dante, as you were going about and preparing for this, what has it been like for you as a trainer?
Well, for me as a trainer, it's been like fulfilling because, I'm helping my friends, my family, my neighbors get out from under this LFO debt that they have. And, it worries many people that in a way it hurts them financially and mentally, spiritually. It like has a weighs a toll on you. And with me helping people, train people, showing people that you can get some relief from this, it like helps you get a little bit of that piece back.
Yes, absolutely. We're addressing the power narrative, right, that seeks to maintain oppressive systems, right? We're really taking into the hands of those of us who would, by the very idea of stigma and stereotype, should not have access, right? We are the impacted, we are the others, yet we're building through the support of legal entities the power and the ability to address a unjust practice, right? And that in itself is allowing us to begin the processes of liberation. Yeah. Is there anything that you would add here, or Tina, would you like to add something here?
Yeah, I mean, it's important, I think it's important to kind of put faces with the people who have been dealing with this type of situation, because, we're all human, we make mistakes. We shouldn't have to pay for those mistakes for the rest of our lives. But once all of this went through, and after the LFO reform was passed, and I was like telling everybody, I took care of all of this stuff for myself and for my husband before I got involved with any of these other programs. And I could have just been in it all for myself and been like, okay, I took care of my stuff. Everybody else can kind of figure it out, but it's our right. And I think it's important. And I was telling anybody and everybody, even people who are like, no, I like, there's no way, I owe too much or whatever. And I'm like, just go do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. So, just paying it forward and helping other people as well has kind of been a huge part of all of this. And it makes me feel good that I can, make an impact and help some other people have some changes as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding that in. And, again, I'm going to go back to that term, like the power that exists. If you visualize what an oppressive system looks like and the people that it's impacted, it's the external agitation enforcing change. So to me, it's very, very exciting. Would you go ahead and cue up, Karen, please, the next slide? And I'm going to have Jahai come in and walk us through this really amazing app. Jahai, if you'd like to take that over, please.
Cool. Thank you so much. So this is the Justice in Motion web app, or screenshots of it at least. Myself, along with Claire, Alessandra, and Sabrina, created it for Georgetown Law. We did it for a practicum, and we actually entered it into a competition, came first place nationally and second place internationally. So that was pretty cool. But the better part is that it's very effective, and I think it'll help create change. So in talking with Anna, Dante, Tina, Debbie, and everybody else, we wanted to make a TurboTax for LFO applications. And so basically what that means is we wanted to make it efficient and as smooth as possible. The app determines user eligibility. It drafts motions for the waiver of interest or reduction of LFOs, and it instructs the user regarding next steps. To emphasize clarity, we've used plain language throughout the app, and everywhere you see green text that's underlined, you can hover over it if you're on a desktop, or click it if you're on your phone, and it will pop up definitions that explain exactly what you're looking at. For example, what LFOs mean. Next slide, please. So there's a 4-step process essentially. And step 1 is just determining if the user is eligible or not. And we do that with 3 questions. The first question is, were you sentenced before July 1st, 2000? The second question is, have you been released from total confinement? And the third question is, which court are your LFOs from? Next slide, please, Karen. If the user is not eligible, we tell them that and also explain why. So if it's because you haven't been released from 24-hour confinement, we explain that. If it's because you chose a court that our app hasn't gotten to providing for yet, then we explain that with the next steps. If you look on the left slide, on the left screenshot, pardon me. Yes. Okay, step 2. So once you are eligible, you'll see the green box on the first screenshot says, great, you're eligible to file the motion to reduce your LFOs. Let's get some basic information. And we collect personal information such as your name, your mailing address, what county, and what case number you're filing for. And we do all that we attempt to do all that in a very empowering way. So again, you see the green text with the underlined to indicate where you can find more information, or where you can pop up more information and learn and fully understand what you're entering into the system. And additionally, the system doesn't save anything. So it's good for privacy concerns and everything like that. So you enter all this, it completes at the end, and it's not saved anywhere on our system, and it's just for you, which kind of gives you that feeling of it's yours, and you can move as you see fit. Next slide, please, Karen. Step 3 is a request to the court. And this step is our bread and butter. So once you've entered your personal information, You then make your statement to the court of what you want the court to do. For example, I would like them to waive $70,000 worth of interest. And you answer a few questions, 5 questions, about whether you were sentenced before 2018, what do you want the court to do? Have you paid restitution? If you know your interest is in a collection agency. If you know your interest in a collection agency, and the last one of whether you would like the court to reduce your LFOs or waive interest. Next step, please. So here we have our last step, which is financial questions. And this is where the user answers. This is where it gets really targeted. So for example, if I answer that I do receive public assistance, I never see anything else as far as financial information goes. I don't get asked about household income or how many members are in my household, because once the system knows that you receive public assistance, you're good as far as the motion goes, and you don't need any additional information, so you can be streamlined. If I say no to the public assistance question, then I'm asked a follow-up question on my household income, on how many people I support, et cetera, et cetera. And so we try to make sure that we only ask as many questions as necessary, so the judge can see that your motion for waiver is satisfied and grant your motion. Next slide, please. And this is I think the celebratory slide. It's the great job, you're almost finished. You are finished with the app, but the steps in real life are not finished. And so you get 2 things after you've completed the app. You get a next steps instruction packet, and you get your actual motion waiver. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see the next steps, which is a list of, it's a list of what you need to do. Is very clear language. Print, sign, and compile your motions packet. It has check marks, so you can check mark as you go along. The first step is to print your motions waiver and print it on single-sided paper. So you go along through that, and you basically have a step-by-step guide of what you need to do, and how you can accomplish it as easy as possible. It also has the contact information in it as well. And let's see, next slide, please. I think some things are going on in the chat. So if I'm missing something, just if one of my cohorts can just shout it out to me, and I'll try to address it as we go along. But the last image right here is the motions packet. It says plaintiff, defendant, my name right there, number 1, 2, and the county that it's in, and it goes through what you, basically it fills out the motion, but instead of having to sit there and read through the motion and try to understand all the legalese, which is immensely convoluted, it was answered all throughout the web app, and it just fills it out as you go along. Once you print it, you can read through it to confirm that it's all correct. You can sign it, and you're pretty much done with your motions packet. The really good thing about this is that you can download it in a PDF file or in a Word file, and you can also email it to yourself in case you don't have access to a printer at that time, and you can use it later on. But the best part of this is that during testing, one user stated that this was the first time she filled out a motion for herself. And if you can imagine how empowering it is to do that, especially as someone who's, you're taking back your power, you're taking back your livelihood. And so it was a really great thing to witness, and I can only imagine how it is to experience it. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. Thank you on behalf of Carmen, Dante, Tina, Living with Conviction. Feel free to, and now we're in Q&A, so feel free to throw out all the questions, and hopefully we're very helpful for you today.
Thank you so much, Shahai. That was just so informational. I just have a quick question. How many people have actually used the app to date? Do you have those numbers?
Hi. So,
okay, there we go.
yeah, no worries, no worries. So this is still in beta form. We haven't actually attached it to our website, but the website will actually have basically a list of all the counties and then the specific procedure that to go through in each county. And so we haven't yet completed that. The app itself was just recently completed during the law school year. And then we also have, we received some comments from Judge Coburn, who's now Division I, but has been very active in LFO reform for a long time. So we have a few additional edits to make, and we are scrambling in order to launch it ASAP. It's not yet though, but we're excited. We had hoped it would be ready today, but it's not quite ready. But thank you for the question.
Thank you. So we are ready for questions. However, I think Debbie, if you could, kind of give a little background of how you came about not only in the process of the tool development, but the storytelling as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, thanks, Carmen. So Living with Conviction came about as a storytelling project because when I first learned about LFOs back in 2014, I was shocked. And while I didn't practice criminal law, I was offended. I think it's an unconscionable policy. And because of my dual set of skills as both an attorney as well as multimedia storytelling, specifically for advocacy purposes, I thought this is a great opportunity and there's such a huge need. And that began the process of doing a ton of research, interviewing a ton of people to understand the process, the issue, and the people. And then I was generously granted access to communities and in particular organizations of formerly incarcerated individuals. And it was only through their grace, bravery, and dignity that they started sharing their stories. So the storytelling aspect, we have right now about 24 different storytellers on the website. Some of it, and we're basically moving it into, both text, audio, and video, multimedia, et cetera. That information, I was part of the LFO consortium of the Minority and Justice Commission, as well as the ACLU-led coalition for LFO reform. And it was awesome to have been invited to do that because the response from the legal community for stories, we all appreciate when people come to the state legislator to testify, and that testimony is critical for legislators. But in advance of that, before that, I had created a bunch of postcards, a magazine, et cetera. And so all of these advocacy organizations had asked for those, purchased those to give to the variety of different legislators who they are lobbying. And so these stories got into the hands of state legislators. And so it was really powerful because, like I said, the demand for these stories, these very personal stories about the impacts of LFOs, because that's something that's lacking from our system overall. We create a law, we hope it's good, and then what happens? A, do people know about it? And is it causing harm in the community? We don't know. We have the system built where we don't know. And so part of my personal mission is to basically continue this work for unjust laws. But since we were successful in getting the right to a waiver of non-restitution interest, it's only upon filing a motion. And so based on the work that I've done in the Global South, where the legal empowerment model is very prevalent, because there is a much less regulated lawyers, frankly, and less of a monopoly on lawyers in this country. We're heavily restricted. But I saw an opportunity. This legal empowerment model has been used very little in this country. So we're very careful, but at the same time, much more needs to be done. So while we did have reform in 2018, there's a lot more to do because frankly, all of this all of that interest is still sitting on people's records, right? And so while yes, it was a huge victory in 2018, everybody in Living with Conviction and then everybody else, isn't actually getting the relief that the legislature intended because it wasn't automatic. And then in addition, the second piece about you can, if it's a manifest hardship to pay for this, to pay for the debt, then you can file a motion if you're not in contumacious default. You can file a motion for a request of reduction of that LFO principal. And so that began the second part of it. And I'll stop talking, but they work hand in hand because the storytelling and the close relationships we have with people with LFOs are then inform our legal advocacy, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop there. So thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello. Yes, as I said at the beginning, my name is Anna Bosch, and I'm the legal director for Living with Conviction. And I became involved in it after hosting a panel of the storytellers in my Rule of Law class at the University of Washington, and was similarly floored to Debbie. And having been, I began my legal career as a prosecutor for King County, so I had some personal knowledge about how sentencings work, yeah, so it's kind of how I got into it initially. The difference between law on the books and law in practice is something that I research. I got a PhD with doing studying reform efforts also in the global South, specifically Indonesia, but elsewhere as well. And so when Debbie and I started talking about legal empowerment and realizing, the reform that happened in 2018 was sort of perfect because it created a mandatory situation where as long as the person did follow the proper, followed the rules of the game, then that waiver of that non-restitution interest was mandatory. So it seemed like a safe, low-hanging fruit to try this out on. And so that's what we did. And then the app, frankly, has just been an amazing addition. And so the big, huge kudos to Jahai and the team at Georgetown for getting this up and running, because it did allow us to do that secondary motion, which does provide the more relief, the one that Debbie mentioned, based on the manifest hardship. So that one is discretionary. So we were a little more nervous when knowing that folks are going out into, obviously we have a big state, 39 counties. Each county has its own flavor and how it handles things. And so, we proceed with caution, but we are gradually, so one of the things that the attorneys do on this is we kind of map out the procedures, right? Like, Debbie and I are on the phone calling the clerk's offices, introducing ourselves, saying, how would somebody who is pro se go about doing this? And so we collect that information. And we have had some folks try to kind of do it on their own. And sometimes the response to people is different to us versus the folks who are impacted. And so the extent that we can use our network and our access to help get this information out there and also make people aware that there is some relief, there is something that you can do. So yeah, we're happy to take any questions and the chats. Yes, please, anybody who wants to get access to the app when it is finally launched, please get in touch, because we want this tool to get out there and be used. That's the whole point. There's this right out there and we want people to be able to get the relief.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. There is a couple of questions. There was one that Jahai answered about if someone had undergone a legal name change, would that be a hindrance? Jahai, would you mind sharing with us what that answer was?
No problem. That was a great question. And basically in the app, it just says if you to input the name that you were, input the name that's in the case, and then say AKA and your current name.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we have a question from an anonymous attendee. What efforts are being undertaken legislatively to address the onerous and draconian process? Who would like to answer that?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So we did have, so just so you know, until 2018, when there was reform that basically stopped the 12% accrual on non-restitution LFOs, that had been about a 3-year effort. And so in 2018, we do need to applaud the legislature at that point, obviously, and we're grateful for that. But as we said, and the issue continues, there was an LFO bill introduced by Representative Tara Simmons in this past legislative session. And it basically was going to provide judges discretion in order to impose restitution based on an ability to pay, as well as make a determination if they're for victim restitution, if the victim will be the recipient of restitution or if there's an insurance agency involved. That bill did not pass. It actually didn't get very far at all. And in this, what I've heard from a variety of partners who are focused on LFOs, I'm not aware of a LFO bill coming up in this next legislative session. I was not surprised given the degree of the LFO work, and there are other areas related to reentry that have had some success. But we're basically starting to kind of regroup and hope to be part of a coalition of organizations committed to additional, basically elimination of LFOs. In the end, it's some people say it's a tax on the poor. It can be perceived as that. It's basically a racialized wealth extraction from communities of color who are disproportionately affected by this. I do think the state of Washington's lack of a property tax is really part of the problem, because as the last time we checked, the state of Washington judicial system was the 48th or 49th least funded state system in the country. And so the choices have been then to instead continue to impose cost, fees, and fines in order to keep the system going. And that's just not working by virtue of the fact that only 7 million could be collected from primarily an indigent group of people, even though about 130 million had been assessed. And keep in mind that figure does not include the vast amount of LFOs imposed by district courts and municipal. So we'll see, stay tuned. There's a lot more work to be done, and we would very much want to be part of that, both as from a storyteller's perspective, because there's a ton. I mean, we could go through a very long, lengthy list of all of the unfair provisions within this structure. So, and then also from a legal advocacy perspective. So thank you for that question. And yes, onerous and draconian, exactly. Thank you. I'm in agreement.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And one more question. This morning in Seattle versus Long, the Washington Supreme Court decided a case that requires courts to consider one's ability to pay when fines are ordered. Under the excessive fines clause of the 8th Amendment, has anyone yet had the chance to consider how this might apply in the future, but also for past cases?
Well,
that's a great question.
I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
So thank you for the information. Anna, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, I hadn't. I hadn't gotten to it yet either. No, I did want to add, if one, I mean, and I hope it's okay to say it. I feel like it was part of the MJC meetings, but in terms of the like advocacy and ideas, you know, we this spring we were fortunate to be, and I think it will be released in the coming months, but we were fortunate to partner with the Minority and Justice Commission and have convene storytellers and trainers to talk about LFO priorities for reform. So that is something we are working on, and we hope to be able to share all of that really amazing ideas for reform based on lived experience, right? Which is often what is missing from some of the reforms that we see. So, but yes, I look forward to digging into that, and thank you, as Deb said, for making us aware of it. And looks like John.
I would add that two things. One is related to, the Minority and Justice Commission was a key partner in this effort. I hope it's okay that October 6th is a tentative date for a statewide convening around LFOs. Beyond that, we don't have any additional information, but stay tuned. That date may shift. We understand it was tentative, but we're excited attend that and be part of that discussion. And then with respect to this decision, that's super exciting. It also, it's another basis for the excessive fines provision. That's been a long time coming, so happy to see that. But know that the ability to pay inquiry has been a constitutional requirement for years, and that Washington state courts have ignored that for quite some time. And so that was then the Washington State Supreme Court came out with several decisions, but Blazina in particular, that said, you know, courts shall conduct an ability to pay inquiry before imposing cost, fees, and fines. And that's been good. And then that was codified in the 2018 reform. So that's even better. So now it's by statute, but know that it goes back to a US Supreme Court decision, State v. Burden, or not State v. I'm sorry, it's a Burden case. I can't remember the name. Anyway, so in terms of your question about how this might apply, I don't know, not having read the decision, but also the fact that the ability to pay inquiry was already a requirement, but it's exciting that there are additional fees and additional legal basis for challenging this and finding it excessive. I will say one of the most important thing, I think that somebody needs to litigate this, and that's not what we do. But as Tina said, and I wish I had put it in the video. So, you know, 12% interest has historically been the statutory rate on all LFOs until the 2018 reform. By contract, every single county and every single court in each county have separate contracts with private collection agencies to, well, not every single county, sorry. Some counties do internal collections, and some counties, and the vast majority of counties, contract out. They have an agency agreement with private collection agencies to collect on these. By contract, and former professor Brian Adamson, who used to be at Seattle University, has done extensive research on this. And those contracts allow private collection agencies to apply anywhere from an additional 19% to 50% interest on top of what's already accruing. So I'll just repeat that: 19 to 30 or 19 to 50%. And that 19 to 50%, the amount varies as to whether or not the LFO amount is above 100K or below 100K. And what else? Anyway, my guess is based on this Seattle v. Long decision, it may be soon that hopefully another organization will find plaintiff, if not many plaintiffs, to basically bring that excessive fines argument against these contracts that the state of Washington is entering into. But I do think, and I don't want to be an apologist for the system, but there's been a whole lot of ignorance about the impact. People just don't think about it. You just go about and do your thing. And so this project and creating platforms and for people such as Tina and Dante to share their experiences is critical to understanding and convincing legislators, clerks, and judges that this is a draconian policy, and that those collection agency percentages are outrageous and probably excessive. So it'll be interesting to see what comes after this new case. Oh, sorry. The SU professor is Professor Adamson. He's now at Case Western University, which is really a bummer. At SU, they used to have a very, very small LFO clinic. He actually said, like, it was super small, but it was impact litigation, basically, they were looking for. And what I'm wondering, and I should know this, is whether or not Seattle v. Long, no, he took a Pierce County case. The students took a case against Pierce County where their client had about over 100,000 LFOs at the beginning, made the argument to a superior court that's requesting that the collection agency not be able to assess that additional, I don't know, up to 50%. And the Superior Court declined, and I don't know the status of that. I don't think they took it further up. Since this is Seattle v. Long, that must not be the same case. But yeah, and also there's a great law review article by Professor Adamson that has come out since he left SU. But I believe that he was also a key partner in with the Minority and Justice Commission and the LFO Consortium as part of that, as well as Dr. Alexis Harris.
All right. Well, thank you. And I believe we're at time, right? Yep. Okay. Well, thank you all who attended, and please feel free to contact Debbie to get in touch on how you can use the app within your own organization. And feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions. Any final words, Debbie or Anna, before we go?
Really grateful to be here, have this.
Thank you to the panelists.
Yeah, and I just also need to thank you, Carmen, Dante, Tina, Jahai, and Anna, because, you know, this is really a labor of love. And thank you for putting yourself out there. It means a lot. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who came. We had a ton of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for caring.
Thanks, everyone.